Welcome to the Brilliantly Resilient podcast. What's your train wreck? Everyone has one. The question is, are you just visiting or are you going to live there? I'm Mary Fran Bontempo. Join me and let's learn how to come through those train wrecks, not broken, but brilliant. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Brilliantly Resilient podcast. I am your host, Mary Fran Bontempo, and today is going to be an interesting show because as I told my guest, at first I was like, nah, and then I thought I have to hear more about this. So today I have with me Carol Looke, who is a psychotherapist. She has a master's in social work, a doctorate in clinical hypnotherapy. She is a founding EFT master, best-selling author, international speaker, and the creator of the Yes Code. Carol Looke, thank you for joining me today.
Mary Fran, I'm thrilled to be here with you.
Well, thank you so much. And as I said, and full disclosure, I said this to you before we started, when you were first brought to my attention, the subject matter, I went kind of like, this sounds a little woo-woo to me. I'm not sure. And then with a little bit of thought and actually doing the process once or twice, I thought I have to learn more about this. So we are talking about EFT, which tell me what those initials stand for.
Emotional freedom techniques, and now everyone just calls it tapping because we're tapping
Tapping.
acupuncture points. Yes.
Yes. And tapping doesn't help its cause any. I mean, I
Yes.
just it doesn't because it doesn't sound clinical. And I think, because of again the woo-woo factor, which is unfortunate because a lot of those things and techniques are, I think, probably based in Eastern medicine, which we're getting more familiar with and finding more about the effectiveness of it. But until we kind of cross that hump and cross over, there is a bit of skepticism. So before we get to that, I do want to talk about your personal story because all of this has to do with, as you put it, clearing the emotional space and the emotional burdens to move things forward in life. And boy, when I started reading your book here, I'm like, whoa, we got a lot of stuff we got to work through. Tell me about your personal story. Where did this all start for you?
Well, the personal story is that I was raised by two alcoholics, a very loving home, and people who could not control their alcohol intake.
Mm.
And when I went to a rehab facility for my mother, there was a counselor there who told us that we could be happy even if our alcoholic was still drinking. And I thought, what is she talking about? What are you talking about? Are you kidding? Anyway, long story short, I left my job. I was very early in a corporate job and became a psychotherapist to help people move through the anxiety, the depression, the frustration, the resentment, the helplessness that so
Mm.
many people feel being raised by well-meaning parents who have not done enough of their own work, who have not cleared their addictions, who have not cleared their own traumas from their childhoods. So that's what led me to be a traditional psychotherapist. Then I entered the field of hypnosis, which was fascinating. And someone in my hypnosis world said, you think that's fun? You got to try this new weird thing called EFT tapping. And I, no way. I was as skeptical. Oh my gosh, Mary Fran, as skeptical as you can be a traditional psychotherapist. And I tried it and it changed everything for me, for my practice. I had massive healings for myself on insomnia, many other things. And it was just, it became the tool for me. And then finally the research came out, which was, we all needed. We
And,
all
and and I do want to get to that because I think that, you know, when we talk about things like emotional healing and therapy and all that, I think one of the reasons, and you do touch on this, that people avoid it is because they think it's going to be such hard, painful, prolonged process where you have to dig up all of this stuff and go over and over and over it. So I know there are elements of that, but the simplicity of this technique seems to be directly at odds with what everybody believes all of that to be.
Yeah.
So you do talk about, you talk about, I want to talk about so many things, but releasing the stress and the conflict in the nervous system, which comes from a lot of things that you list. So let's talk a little bit about that because we obviously can't identify everybody's stress points, But give us a few of the things that people may be carrying that this process can help us kind of move out of the way.
Childhood trauma, events that happened. You could have moved with your family and moved schools, and that was traumatic for you. There could have been a death of a grandparent at just the wrong time, right? The death of a pet, the death of a parent, friends splitting up,
Mm.
failing a test. There's so many things. We get to say what is stressful for us. Then we grow up, high school, maybe university, our first jobs, and we have more stresses. And we don't know how to handle it if we haven't been given the tools as a kid. If we don't know how to set good boundaries, say no, take care of ourselves, put ourselves first, then we're in trouble. We're in trouble when the boss barks at us and needs several more deadlines than we're able to handle. So all of those fall into the category of stress, and how they start to show up for us is in our relationships, is in our health, is in our boundaries with our friends, is in not taking care of the kids properly, not having good boundaries with the teenagers, whatever it is, it starts to show up. And then we start to get the wear and tear. So one of my big problems, I was having some physical issues, but also having terrible insomnia, which was anxiety based. I didn't know how to take care of my anxiety, right? My mother was still drinking, my parents were still drinking, lots of things were happening, and I didn't have the tools, right? And long-term psychotherapy is that, long-term psychotherapy. And what we do with the tapping is calm down the fight or flight response or the stress response in the brain that affects the nervous system. And the nervous system is talked about now all the time, but we didn't used to know that basic talk therapy isn't really affecting that much in your nervous system. You can tell the story, you can gain beautiful insight, you can understand your behavior, but until you get a body-based technique that really shifts the brain and rewires your nervous system, you're not going to change that much. You might be more intelligent about your challenges. I've seen changes in psychotherapy, absolutely. But when I found this technique, which you say correctly goes against the long-term feeling of, going through pain and years of psychotherapy, it was like, well, why would I spend so much time doing the other? This goes directly to the heart of the matter, which is where we store things in our brain, in our memory, in the wiring, and calms us down immediately. And, I've worked with veterans. I've done everybody who comes in with problems with their spouse, problems with their kids, problems at work, challenges, physical challenges. And I worked with a group of veterans. And once you've done that kind of trauma work, you see things that you can't deny the results. You cannot deny when you've done serious trauma work, how quick the technique is and how much comfort and soothing and calming down of stress it provides.
Well, first of all, I love everything about what you just said, but there are a couple of things that I kind of want to focus on. The first one that really struck me is we get to decide what's stressful for us. And that is almost a revelation because I think there's a lot of guilt out there from people looking at their lives in general. And if you have a generally good life by the look of the outside, what the outside world's parameters are, I think it's hard for some of us to say, I'm stressed. Like what? Because then we look at our lives and we go, well, what do I have to worry about? What do I have to complain about? So those things just build up in us because, and is this part of it? We can't admit that these are things that we have to work through.
We get into places of denial and mine's not that bad in comparison. But to go to your work about resilience, when you have childhood traumas, and again, it could have been moving, it could have been the death of a pet, it could have been you didn't get picked for the soccer team in fifth grade. When we have traumas that are not dealt with, they make us less resilient. And you must know all those scientific reports and research about resilience and how we become less and less resilient. The rubber band gets stretched and stretched and stretched, and before you know it, it has no stretch left. And that's what happens to us. So if we don't learn how to handle something like that, no, I'm fine. Women in our culture,
Oh
right?
my gosh.
The,
How many
the
times do we say that? I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine.
I'm fine. So it's not about what the event was. It's about how it affects your nervous system, your outlook on life, and your view of yourself or your self-esteem. So it doesn't matter. Somebody else can say, I had a terrible car accident. Somebody else I said, I had the worst divorce I've ever heard of. Somebody else would say, well, I just got pink slipped and got another job within 3 months. And people think, well, that's not stressful. It is to that person.
Yes.
It
And
is.
that part of that self-judgment maybe is something that we have to maybe also learn how to get rid of, because that probably is a stressor on the nervous system too, as well, I would imagine.
Yes, because it dampens the truth of our own emotional balance. So if we're feeling stressed, but we think, but my neighbor has it much worse, well, what does that do to our feelings, our emotions that are running through our nervous system every single day? We're allowed to have our reactions, our stress. When I wrote the book, part of the challenge for me was, okay, so my parents were alcoholic, but I had a roof over my head. We went to great schools. We had scholarships. I had sisters. We had this very loving family, no huge tragedies. Well, in the end, the tragedy was grief for me. The tragedy was waiting for the other shoe to drop and
Mm.
having my mother, and we were extremely close, disappear into alcoholism, then get sober, disappear into alcoholism, then get so. That's hard on a kid. That's hard on a teenager.
Yes.
So somebody else might say, oh, well, you had, at least you had food on the table and you went to schools and you didn't have it so bad. It's like, you know what? Don't say that to me and I won't say it to you.
Yes.
Right? Because we all manage things differently. So we come into this world with our temperament, then we learn or don't learn the right skills, and then we're just thrown curveballs by life. And how we deal with them and how they get stacked up is really important. So this is a nervous system technique, changed my life, changed the life of all my clients. And I just wouldn't go back. I wouldn't go back to anything else. And I say to my workshops and clients, if I find another technique that is more efficient, faster, or more profound, I'll be the first in line to teach it to you. Drop this other one, we'll go for it.
Right.
Haven't found it. 25 years, have not found it. All the techniques work. I do love the science now that is behind EFT tapping. That's fabulous. That I love that.
Hmm.
There were so many amazing stories in the beginning that we didn't need that much science, because people are like, oh, you lost weight. Oh, good. You quit smoking. Oh, you now no longer have fears of success. Sign me up is what was happening, which is why the field grew. Then the science came out.
Right. And we do, you know, it's very easy to get sucked into a world where every person on the internet has a theory about everything, every single thing. So I think that the science is important. But one of the things that you also said, and this is something I talk about in one of the first steps of tapping into your resilience, is acknowledging the issue. You have to acknowledge it. And I think we get so good at pushing things down. And there's a part of that I think was intended to make us resilient in the sense of, when I was a kid, it was like, toughen up, toughen up, get it. It's, you're fine. There's a lot of stuff going to happen to you in life. And yes, all of that is true. And you do have to learn the kind of level of reaction as you get older. But in order to do that, you have to recognize what the things were in the first place and sit with that for a few minutes. So that's kind of a nice segue for as to how this works, because you do talk about that. That's the first part of this process. So let's start moving into that. Take me into how this works.
Well, what they discovered is that one of the basic things that we can do with our emotions is just admit them. And the first step of doing the tapping is saying, even though I have this problem, I accept myself anyway. And some people, I've worked with the Wall Streeters, they're like, I'm not going to say I accept myself. How silly. Try it. Try it if you want to lower the resistance in your system. So that's how we start. But the point is, we're accessing a file. So let's say someone is afraid to stand out, afraid to be visible, or someone feels so much stress at work or at home. We ask them to measure it, tune in, and what do you feel? Oh, 0 to 10, how do you feel? And they'll say, yeah, I feel like it's a 9. The stress is so high. So we get a measurement. And when we've done that, you've actually opened the file in your brain that says, this is bad, this is scary, I'm in danger,
Mm.
right? This is not good for me to talk about it, right? And that's what you want, because then we go in with the tapping, which calms down that fight or flight response that is automatic. We can't help it. If you have an old reaction or a new reaction to a stressor, somebody yelling, hearing a noise outside, the kids screaming, anything, we can't stop that. It's automatic. But what we do is open the file, and while the file is open, we are sending calming signals to the brain with the tapping on acupuncture points calms you down. And even very skeptical people will say, okay, I don't know what you just did, but I feel better. What is that? Because when I was new at it, I was a hypnotist, and people would come in for weight loss and quit smoking and anxiety. And I would say, let me give you 5 minutes of a new technique I've learned. And if you don't like it, I'll give you 5 minutes at the end of the session. Oh, okay, Carol, if you need to do it. And I'd do 5 minutes and they'd say, what happened? What's going on? They'd come back the next week and say, what happened to my cravings for sugar? We calmed you down because cravings are not about sugar. Cravings are a stress response. What,
Hmm.
why was I able to finish that project I've been procrastinating on for so long? We cleared your fear of success. Oh, anyway, so that's part of what happens. So when you calm down that fight or flight response in the brain, you no longer look at things the same way. And as you know from your work, you become more resilient, you become more resourceful. You start
Hmm.
thoughts and feelings and access to a kind of brilliance that you think, where was that? Where was that when I was fighting with my spouse and yelling at the kids? Where was that? So your real brain comes back online is what happens. Your thinking brain, your executive functioning comes back online. So the tapping, so we open the file, we're distressed, we're actively asking you to be distressed about something, and then tap, 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 and very quickly it calms it down, and you could start to see it differently, feel it differently, notice the changes in your body, and say, okay, well, I could public speak, I could do that. Okay, I could finish my website. I'm not so afraid that people are going to judge me. Oh, okay. And then you start to see the changes, and they can't be denied. So someone could be skeptical and say this is a silly woo-woo technique, but once they start to feel and see the changes in their life, again, they are on board, as I was after I had to get over my skepticism.
Well, I think, I'll be honest with you, that's pretty much what happened to me. And that's why we're having this conversation because I tried it a couple of times and I was like, why do I feel better? This was just the dumbest thing I ever did. And because you're standing there watching yourself tap yourself in a mirror or whatever, not that you have to do it that way, but I'm thinking, why did that work? But I want to make the point about the acupuncture
Yes.
points in the body because that I think is more acceptable to people in terms of the science. That is something that we've heard about in terms of our nervous system. But I think that people don't realize that there is a non-invasive way with the tapping to access that. And that's important because some people, like, it doesn't matter how stressed they are, you're not putting a needle in them. That's
Right.
not happening.
Right. And there are acupuncture points all over the body, but the ones that the original founders in the 80s and 90s discovered were just easy to get to, easy to do in public, easy to present at a workshop. So there are thousands of points all over your body, but we do the ones that we can access. And you're tapping on the acupuncture point, which sends a little signal to the brain. And again, the research is fun. If somebody wants to get into it, they can really research this and calms you down. If we don't calm down, we can't tell ourselves anything.
Right.
If
What's
not,
the point?
right? If we are not literally, the stress response is going down and our nervous system is starting to feel safe, we're wired for safety and everybody wants to be successful. Well, if you don't feel safe being successful, you're going to blow it. You're going to get in your own way because the honest human wiring is for safety. Doesn't
Hmm.
matter. We can't argue. We can't argue biology in that way.
And that's exactly it. I think so many of these responses are things that are, they go back to the beginning of time. They're the fear, it's about survival. At the end of the day, it's about survival. The life that we lead now, we're not being chased by, a woolly mammoth or a saber-toothed tiger. So the stressors are very different, but we're still having the same biological types of reactions to those stressors. So, but I think that's important for people to recognize because it's easy to push things aside and say, "Oh, that's ridiculous. I'm not afraid of success," or "I shouldn't be afraid of that. I shouldn't be afraid of that.
Yeah.
I shouldn't fear that." But that's another word that we have to kind of get out of our vocabulary. But you said one of the things that you said, and I'm looking at one of the all my marks in your book here. There are actual studies, including, as you said, MRI imaging, that show that the tapping on the acupoints are the curative agent
Yes.
in treatment.
Yes, because a lot of people have said, oh, it's just because the person's telling their story a few times. That's why they feel better. No, it's not. Oh, it's just because you say I'm okay with it and I accept my. No, it's not. They have done the studies with MRIs, and the F there stands for functional
Okay.
MRIs, where the tapping on the acupoints is what's causing the change. Because a lot of people wanted to just do tapping without tapping, right? Because it looks so weird, but it's you need it. You need the tapping, and you need to be focused. So some people say, "Oh, I was walking and tapping last night." Like, don't do that. Be focused, choose a problem, focus in on it, tap, tap, tap. Oh, I was tapping at a stoplight. Yeah, I don't recommend people tap when they're driving, okay? Because sometimes we have other feelings that are surprising to us.
And
Don't
you
do
are
it.
talking about rewiring the emotions that are attached to specific things. And I think that that's really important because, some people look at it and think, oh, you're just tapping on your face or you're doing whatever, but that's only a part of it, really. This is about identifying, and that's another whole part of therapy.
Yes,
Identifying what is going on with you, and then you can move into the curative phase of it.
absolutely. So I will never abandon the therapeutic responses in therapy in general, and gaining rapport and listening to someone. That's incredibly important because plenty of people can learn tapping quickly, but they don't know what they're doing with human interactions and behavior and feelings. So it's
Right.
important to be clear about identifying what's going on. We bring up the file, tap, tap, tap. How do you feel now? What's coming up? Do it again, and going around, and it's not magic in 12 seconds. It is fast, but sometimes there are layers for
Mhm.
myself. The layers, I tried to lose weight many times, but it was not until I dealt with my grief. And then there was lots of deaths and grief in my family. It was not until I dealt with the real grief that I lost the weight permanently. So I got older. You'd think it would be harder to lose the weight, and it became easier. And now I've kept it off for, I don't know, 15 years or something.
And I
So
think there is that piece of the old stuff. Like just because it was in the past, don't think that you're not having residual effects.
exactly. I'll ask people sometimes, I'll do a tapping on guilt.
Oh God, you're saying words that are making the hair on the back of my neck stand up.
And I'll ask people, how long, how high is the guilt when you think of that incident? Don't even tell me what it is, 0 to 10. And they'll say 8, 9, 10, 8, 9, 10. And I'll say, and how long have you felt that guilt? And people have said to me, looked me in the eye and said 27 years, 14 years, 31 years. So we're carrying this around. This is why I love the work. I help people put the burdens down. I
Oh,
help
and
people
that is,
put the burdens
it's
down.
such a relief because these things then continue to build. So then you're not only dealing with the initial thing that you thought you were past because it was past. And on most of the time, if we really look at these things, they aren't nearly as gargantuan as we think they are. But they emotionally affected us that way. But if we don't recognize that, and if we don't come to some kind of peace with that, then the other things are just going to build and build and build and build. And then pretty soon you're in a constant state of stress. And even words like when you said, when you said talk about your feelings, I went, no, no, I don't
Right.
want to do that.
That's right. So a lot of people are afraid of identifying the feelings, remembering the event. Now,
Mhm.
this isn't about repressed trauma. Do you remember when the teacher yelled at you in front of the other kids? Yes, I do. How do you feel when you remember that? Oh my gosh, I feel terrible. It
Yes.
was 25 years ago, and they're still feeling it. So that's what we have to get out of the body, because all the traumas are registered in the nervous system in the body, and we've assumed for decades that it was only registered up here.
Oh my gosh, that's profound. Okay, let's get into this. Show me how we start. We're going to do a little tapping exercise here. If you need me to blurt out something that I have that was traumatic, there's plenty of it, so I'll just pick one.
Well, what we need to do is choose a very clear target, which can be a feeling, a belief, a limiting belief, a symptom, or a memory of an event. So you're extremely successful. So fear of success is clearly not an issue for you,
Oh
but
no, it is.
oh,
It's
it is. Okay.
always been. It's always, always, always been.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you think of the next stage in your business or whatever's going on for you that would trigger the fear, go there in your mind and repeat, I'm afraid of that success. See if you can, if that feels real and you can tune into it and you can get a number 0 to 10. 10 is, oh, I'm not going there.
Hmm. Yeah, well, I literally just released some brilliantly resilient courses, and that's a new venture for me.
Yes.
So this is the point at which I have to go out there and I have to promote it and put it out there and everything, and I am literally white knuckled.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'm gonna say it's probably about a 7 or an 8
Okay.
to for that. Yeah.
And are you afraid? What are you afraid of when you have to go out there and present it and offer it? What do you actually, what is the real fear of?
I think the fear, maybe it's not a fear of success as much as it's a fear of failing at that venture.
Okay.
You know, whenever, as a writer, which you know, anytime you put parts of yourself out there for the world, there is an element of subjectivity from the public. So there's always that, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, are they going to like it? Does this make any sense? You know, it always makes sense up here. So there's that. Yeah.
Until you produce it.
Right.
Still a 7 or an 8 when we're talking about
Yes. Yeah,
it.
I would think so. Yep.
So I'm going to lead you through a very basic, simple round of the tapping. Okay.
Okay.
So you start by tapping with two fingers on either hand. It's called the side of the hand or the karate chop point.
Okay.
Tap right there. And here's the basic statement. Even though I'm afraid they'll reject it,
Even though I'm afraid they'll reject it,
and I can feel myself white knuckling,
and I can feel myself white knuckling,
I deeply and completely accept myself anyway.
I deeply and completely accept myself anyway,
Even though I'm afraid I might fail at this,
even though I'm afraid I might fail at this.
and I can feel the tension in my body.
And I can feel the tension in my body.
I accept who I am and why I'm afraid.
But I accept who I am and why I'm afraid.
Keep the two fingers and now tap on these points. And you can tap either side when there's two sides available or just one side. That research has shown you don't have to do both sides. So the beginning of the hair of one of your eyebrows. I'm afraid I might fail.
I'm afraid I might fail.
Side of the eye. I'm afraid to go out there with my new venture.
I'm afraid to go out there with my new venture.
Under the eye. What if they don't like it?
What if they don't like it?
Under the nose. What if they reject me?
What if they reject me?
Chin point. What if they don't receive me well?
What if they don't receive me well?
I can feel the tension as I'm waiting to be rejected.
I can feel the tension as I'm waiting to be rejected.
Under the arm on either side. I can feel the tension because I'm worried they won't like it.
I can feel the tension because I'm worried they won't like it.
Then we go around in the top of the head, very important acupuncture point up there. I'm afraid they're going to reject it and me.
I'm afraid they're going to reject it and me.
Good. Then we just take a deep breath. There's no right or wrong answer. We go back to the same thing you were afraid of. Don't switch topics. Oh, I feel the white knuckling going out there. Any change in your 7-8 number?
Yeah, I think there is. I'm not going to say it's a huge change, but I think that idea of accepting myself anyway is something that's unique in this process. Because if we feel rejected or threatened or whatever, we often assume it's our fault and we've done something wrong.
So go back to the statement, I'm afraid of, and see if you can fill in the blank as specifically as possible. When I put myself out there, I'm actually afraid of.
When I put myself out there, I'm actually afraid of, I guess, people rejecting the work.
Good.
That's what it comes down to.
We'll do it again. Even though I'm still afraid that people might reject my work,
Even though I'm still afraid that people might reject my work,
I accept who I am and how I feel.
I accept who I am and how I feel.
Even though I feel the tension in my body because they might reject my work,
Even though I feel the tension in my body because they might reject my work,
I accept who I am and how I feel.
I accept who I am and how I feel.
Good. Two fingers, eyebrow point. I'm afraid they'll reject my work.
I'm afraid they'll reject my work.
Side of the eye. What if they criticize me?
What if they criticize me?
Under the eye. What if I feel like a failure?
What if I feel like a failure?
Under the nose. No wonder I'm reluctant to put it out there.
No wonder I'm reluctant to put it out there.
Chin point. No wonder I feel the fear in my body.
No wonder I feel the fear in my body.
Collarbone point, one of these knobs here. I'm afraid to put my work out there.
I'm afraid to put my work out there.
What if they reject me?
What if they reject me?
What if they reject my work and I feel terrible?
What if they reject my work and I feel terrible?
Take another breath. Now, beginning tapping, people just say the same thing every single point. I can't do that. I've taught it for too long. So I go through
Change it
the
up.
story. I change it up. So there's no right or wrong answer again. You're going back to, I'm afraid of putting my work out there. What if they reject it? How does that feel to you now?
You know, it's really interesting. It feels like, well, so what? If they reject it. It doesn't matter. Who cares?
Which is the sign that your nervous system is no longer
It
up.
is definitely coming down. Yes, I can feel that it kind of buzzing that you feel when you're anxious. It's definitely lessening. It's definitely lessening.
And you would not say what you just said if you had not had a transformation inside in the
Right.
nervous.
Right.
So what? So you were not so what about this at the beginning.
No, I wasn't. I wasn't. And now I feel like, hey, you know what? I believe in it. And so I feel like what I'm getting out of this is also becomes a way to personally affirm and validate who you are, what you're doing, and how you're feeling about it.
Yes, absolutely. Validate, acknowledge. Some people say, well, the tapping's fine, but just being able to say it out loud what the truth
Yeah.
is. Because I'll ask them question, what's the upside of not being successful? They're like, what? What do you mean? I want to be successful. But you keep getting in your own way. So there has to be an upside of being stuck. Oh, maybe there is, right? And so you find out what the real issue is. And then they say, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. And they're like, huh, that's something I've never said before, or I've never said out loud that my terror is about being visible because someone's going to hurt me. Oh, so that is part of the process.
Well, and this whole idea of just loving and accepting yourself, I think that there's such hard words to say. I think that, and again, I don't want to go all religious and stuff like that, but I was raised as a Catholic, and there's a lot of guilt in that religion. You know, there's a lot of, you're never going to be as good as you're supposed to be. You're never going to do, the things you're a sinner. You're a sinner. And to come to that place where you can actually say, I love and accept myself, those are hard words to get out.
Which is good information to know. Those
Yes.
are hard words to get out. Oh, we have a challenge that we can tap on.
Yes, they are hard words to get out. And I know I'm not alone in that because we're not used to talking about love in terms of ourselves. We are used to it in an outward way, but this piece of information is probably so essential to living a successful, a validated and emotionally stable life when you can say, you know what, I'm good with me. So few of us, I think, can say that.
And the ripple effect is so important. What you're talking about is when someone can say, I accept myself, even though I've made mistakes, even though this happened to me, even though this is going on, they can be more present with people in their life, whether they're
Yes.
lectures and tours like you are and workshops or books or, psychotherapy as I am. Then you're more present. Then the people feel heard and understood. And I think that's the problem with our world, Mary Fran, is that people don't feel validated, heard, or understood. And if we could change that, it starts with us being able to say, you know what, imperfect, not feeling good, barked at my spouse the other night, whatever is going on that we feel bad about, and just say, you know what, doing the best I can. And I choose to be present right now with who's ever in front of me.
That is all so profound. Like we're near the end of our time, but before we go anywhere, I want to talk about the yes code and I want to talk about yes, thank you, because that seems to me to be the next part of this. Once you get to a place where you can go, okay, I'm good. Now, what is this idea of saying yes to the next thing? What's the next thing? And let's go there.
Well, people have such a hard time making decisions because we've either been talked out of the skill, or we've been told we don't know what we're talking about, or we're afraid of the consequences. So what I do is just help people, in the yes code is the coaching method, is to help people get really clear on what they want and why aren't they there yet. That's the
Hmm.
key, right? People say, well, how do I know if I have success blocks? And I say, look at your life, look at your progress, look at your bank account. How are you doing? Oh, I'm procrastinating on this project. I haven't finished the book. I'm doing this. And then we do the clearing process, which is the tapping. Let's clear the fears, the yes buts, the I don't want to do this, I don't want to stand out, I'm afraid someone will be jealous. Let's clear all that. Then, with that space and quietness, what's next? What is your next yes? What is the next step you need to take now that fear is no longer dragging you back, pulling on your feet to keep you down? What's the next step?
And there's a big piece of this that you just hit on. It's quieting things down so that you can focus and function on where you want to go, as opposed to living with all these things pulling you backwards to try to keep you in a place where you might not be happy, but you're kind of safe at the moment. And that's, I think, the illusion that at least from what I'm hearing, that's what we kind of have to get rid of. You're not necessarily safe there because your body is so wired in a constant response state of the stressors that you're carrying.
Yes, and we're all chasing shiny objects on Facebook, and we're all the noise and the distraction in our heads. If we could just calm that down, which sometimes just calming the nervous system does, you're safe now. Were you safe at age 8? Maybe not. Were you safe at age 15? Maybe not. But right now, the truth is, if you can calm your physiology down and that reactivity, you're safe now. Now, what's your next decision? Now, what do you need to do? What would you like to do? What would you choose to do if you're not always saying yes to everybody else, right? Part of learning how to say yes is saying no, right?
So, is there a measure of this also where you can kind of congratulate yourself for getting through those things and now it's time to lay them down?
Yes. Yes, but it does not happen until you know it and feel it in your body and your heart
Right,
that this issue is no longer bothering me. This issue
right.
is no longer, I'm no longer dragging around whatever happened with the last boss, the last spouse, the last job. I'm not dragging, or what happened in childhood, I'm not dragging that around anymore. And when you feel that in your heart and your gut, you know, you
So,
can.
is there a way to use the tapping with affirmations as well, or is it mostly for clearing emotional blocks?
The original part was clearing all the emotional blocks, which would allow the affirmative feelings towards yourself to come up. Then
Hmm.
people came along and said, oh, law of attraction, we're not allowed to focus on the negative. And all they would do is positive statements. And it didn't work because there was no place to land.
Right,
People
right,
have
right,
too much garbage, up to
right,
here.
right, right.
What I do is I make sure we've taken care of the numbers, brought the tension or the stress down. Then I do the gratitude work. That's the point of Yes, Thank You, the Yes, Thank You book. So then you can say your gratitude list. Then you can thank the universe for what's coming your way after your anxiety, hurt, frustration, and guilt is low enough.
Ah, okay. I love it. Carol, look, thank you so much for joining us today. So let me ask you to just recap here because we do have a process. So we start with the EFT work and then we get with this. Kind of sum that up for us and then tell everybody where they can learn more about you.
Well, the first thing is to identify what's bothering you and address it with a self-help technique, a stress relief technique like EFT tapping. And then once that has quieted down and the noise of the stress has gone away, then you have access to moving forward and making new choices. Then you can add the gratitude list to it, your gratitude feelings about what's going on in your life. And it's just a beautiful combination. And there's such research about gratitude as well as EFT. The two of them combined really made this book what I wanted it to be.
Well, I am so delighted to have you with us today. Where can people learn more about you?
They can go to carollooke.com and I'll give you the link for the free bonus videos in the book portal, which people can just put their name in and get those. So I'll give that to you afterwards.
That is wonderful. And all of that will be in our show notes when this episode airs. And Carol will be part of our Brilliance Bits with all of her brilliance included in that. So make sure you look for that. And if you still need a little more inspiration, head on over to brilliantlyresilient.net. You can sign up for our Brilliance Bit there, get a little bit of brilliance to keep you going through the day. And we'll see you next time on the next episode of the Brilliantly Resilient podcast. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining me for another episode of the Brilliantly Resilient podcast. Now, before you go, remember this. Resilience isn't about bouncing back to who you were. It's about becoming who you're meant to be. If today's episode helped you reset, rise, or see your brilliance a little more clearly, I invite you to take the next step with me. Explore the Brilliantly Resilient resources, including the podcast, books, and the new Brilliantly Resilient mini course series, all designed to meet you exactly where you are. You can learn more and get started at brilliantlyresilient.net. Until next time, stay steady, stay curious, and keep moving forward, one resilient step at a time.